How's it going, YouTube? Gonna be making a video here on the 15 Tango MOS for the Army. Um, so a little bit of backstory. I spent about just under 3 years as a 15 Tango. I reclassed halfway through my 6 year commitment, and yeah, I have a little bit of experience. I did the whole path. I went all the way from maintenance up to flying. I flew for a little bit, and then I got out. So we're going to start with the training. So the training is the same for if you're a reclass. Well, let me rephrase that. If you are a reclass coming from a non aviation role, your training will be the same. So if you came from field artillery like I did, you'll do 16 weeks at Fort Eustis. Same with if you're fresh out of basic training, you'll go to Fort Eustis, Virginia as well for 16 weeks. I have a separate video. I will attach a link in the description for reclassing at Fort Eustis. When I did my schooling for a 15 Tango, I was a reclass. If you are reclassing from a, I don't know which MOSs basically transfer. I'm sure if you're like a Chinook guy, like a Chinook mechanic or something like that, I'm pretty certain those do, but I don't know all the list on all that. But they go to a different school that is like a shortened version to reclass to a 15 Tango. I don't remember the location where that is, and I know it's much shorter. I think it's only like eight or 10 weeks. It's really short. I don't have any information on that though. But so moving on, after you finish your 16 weeks of schooling at Fort Eustis, Virginia, you will be assigned to a unit. Wherever that unit may be, whatever. If you're reserve or guard, you're probably you should know that before you go there. If you're active duty, you kind of just figure it out. A lot of guys on active duty who are waiting for a unit, they literally just sit around after school, and they could be there from anywhere from 3 days to like weeks waiting for a unit. It's pretty rare for stuff like that to happen. Usually everything's pretty well set up, but when stuff fails, the active duty guys always get screwed, whereas the reserve and the guard guys always have priority of like schoolhouse slots and all that type of stuff always goes to guard first, followed by reserve, and then active duty. So hopefully none of that stuff happens and you'll be out of Fort Eustis, because that place is a shithole. The base sucks. The surrounding area sucks. It's just not a really good place unless you travel to Virginia Beach, which is, it's cool for a time or two. But anyways, moving on. So after you're assigned to a unit, usually I would say probably about 95% of the time or more, you are going to start in the maintenance company. I mean, it's probably more close to like 98 or 99%. In my case, I actually started in a flight company due to the we had a severe shortage of crew chiefs. So I went to the flight company, and then I got kicked to the maintenance company because we were getting ready to deploy, but they didn't have a slot for me in the flight company. And then right at the beginning, when we got in country, I got kicked back to the flight company. That was a whole mess. But anyways, so after your schooling, you will go to, usually it's called the Delta Company, and that is like the maintenance company for helicopters. So the Delta Company consists of the Chinook mechanics, the Black Hawk mechanics, the Lakota mechanics, which most of those are actually like civilian side, at least in my state where they were. I was in the Colorado Army National Guard. In our state, it was done by the full-time guys who had A&P licenses, and they did all that stuff. We didn't have any guys like on the unit side, the Army side, I should say, that did that. But anyways, in Delta Company, you'll be either a Black Hawk, you'll have your Black Hawk mechanics, your Chinook mechanics, your Apache mechanics, all that stuff. Whatever your battalion has, that's where your maintainers will go. Your Delta Company guys do most, I don't want to say most of the heavy maintenance, but they do the majority of the maintenance. In my situation, our flight companies had more maintenance experience than our Delta company. So our half the time, the crew chiefs were doing more of the heavy maintenance than Delta company. Our Delta company only had a couple guys who had any serious experience. So um, for us, it was a very unique situation. But most of the time, your Delta company will do all of your major maintenance, and your flight companies will do your inspections and find stuff that's broken for a Delta company to fix. So, anyways, though, after you do time in Delta company, if you choose that, if you decide that you want to move up to the flight companies, usually the process is you submit a packet to transfer, and you go through like a board. You have to sit down and answer tons of questions, talk about knowledge. It's like you're basically having like a job interview, but people actually know you, you know them, and but they're pretty hard interviews. I mean, depending what they ask you, you have to study your TMs. They ask you a lot of that stuff. Ask you why you want to fly. They talk to you about all the requirements and all that. And part of your packet is going and getting a flight physical, and that's where a lot of people find out real quick if they are unable to fly. There's a lot more stricter medical requirements for flying. A lot of much more strict medical requirements for flying. So a lot of people who want to go to flight will go to get their flight physical, and they will find out there's something wrong with them that disqualifies them from flying. I mean, something as simple as like kidney stones can be a problem. Like I had a problem with that where I had to wait for a waiver for kidney stones for it took like 3 to 6 months, and then my packet got lost. It's a nightmare. Yeah, it's a dealing with flight physical stuff is always a nightmare for the flight side. But anyways, if you decide you want to fly, you do your packet, your interview, um, all that stuff, and then if you move to a flight company, usually you will be a flight company bitch. Quite literally, is what it is called. For it really depends. I mean, it depends on the availability of training. It depends on the availability of crew chiefs. There's a whole lot of factors that go into play. I was in a assistance role as a basically a slave being run by a slave driver for about 6 months. No, about 8 months. No, it was about 6 months. So I did about 6 months in that role, and then they finally let me start flying. So I did all, and then if you want to start flying, you're gonna do your ground schooling. So you're gonna have weeks of schooling. Quite literally, it's like for me, it was a one-on-one type schooling with a flight instructor, and then you will start flying. You'll go out and you'll just do like traffic patterns, which is where you literally just like the pilots. It's a lot of times you do it with newer pilots or pilots that just need hours but don't want to do any like real flying. You just literally fly around in circles, and you'll turn left, turn right, just to get you familiarized. And then there's a whole progression. You'll start out as RL3, which is readiness level 3. I think it's RL3. It's been a while. It's been a couple years. And then you will go from that. There's certain tasks you have to complete, whatever that is. There's tons of tasks. And then if you get signed off, you go to RL2, which then you'll start doing like sling loads and stuff like that. There's just a bunch of tasks. With each task list is a building block to build you up. And then when you test out, you will go, and then usually you'll do a lot of flights with your senior instructor, and they will eventually either keep you in RL2 or they will sign you off to RL1, which means you are a fully trained crew chief able to fly without an instructor on board. So when you are in RL progression is what it's called, you cannot fly without an instructor in the helicopter with you. Now they don't have to be in the other crew chief window. They can sit on the bench, because I did numerous flights where you have an instructor that's basically grading both of you. I did numerous flights like that. So then once you are RL1, you're expected to know basically when you get to that point, when you get a mission to fly, you go off and you are supposed, as a single crew chief, you are able to completely get the aircraft ready for pre-flight for the pilots, and then after flight, ready to you're supposed to be able to do everything by yourself. Um, Usually, though, you will have other crew chiefs and stuff on the flight line, depending and stuff, and everybody will really help each other out and stuff like that. So now your experience with progression, your experience with going from Delta Company to a flight company. So I went from Delta Company to our assault company, which was Alpha Company. Excuse me. And then Bravo Company was our Chinooks, and Charlie Company was also Blackhawks, but they were a medevac company. And that's a pretty common structure across for like the structure of how the companies go usually. Not always the case though. But your experience is going to be very different if you're active or guard or reserve. So first off, I'll tell you straight up, it all depends on your unit. Every unit flies different. Every unit has um, different budgets. Basically, every unit is different, and that's kind of what it boils down to. So, like in my case, in the Colorado Guard, we flew more than the active duty counterparts did in Fort Carson. Granted, for the size, we had like around a dozen Blackhawks, and active duty has, I don't even know how many they have there, but we flew for our size. We outflew them constantly because we had to deal with search and rescue. We had to deal with all kinds of stuff. That's a whole different beast. Doing search and rescue and all that stuff on the guard side. That was the reason why I actually wanted to do it in the guard, was because in the guard you have a whole different side of flying. You have the army side, and then you have the civilian side where you go out and you fight fires, you do search and rescue missions, you do we even had a counter drug unit, stuff like that. There's all kinds of opportunities. Every state's different. Every state has different stuff. But that's why the big reason why I want to do it in the guard. There was so many opportunities. Whether you're a Chinook guy, whether you're a Blackhawk guy, whether you're if you transfer over from Blackhawks to Lakotas, that is another opportunity. There's the amount of opportunity is your I mean, you can really make what you want of it to a point. There's only so much you can do, but if you put in the work and you really want to be there, you're treated differently when you are in that type of unit. Like when you're in a flight company, it's very much a first name basis type of thing. Very different lifestyle. I mean, you're in the army, at least you're kind of treated like a prima donna for army standards. In the Air Force, you would still fall under substandards. So you're about as good as it gets for the Army, but still worse than the Air Force's lowest class. So that is something to think about there. If I were to do it all over again, I definitely would fly in the Air Force. If I were to, I would have gone to try to do Pave Hawk type stuff in the Air Force if I were to do it all over again. But we don't get that option in life. Um, but yeah, my overall opinion of the job and everything, I had a blast. I loved it. I I loved wrenching on it. I did a little bit on the technician side or the civilian side, whatever you want to call it. I did a little bit on that side, and I did. I loved it. I did a one deployment while I was in the flight company, and it was a great time. It was a great job. You are going to work long days, long hours, and your schedule is going to be sporadic. You will go from days to nights, back to days. You'll be up at 3 a.m. Then you'll have to go out like 2 days later at like 11 p.m. Your schedule in a flight company is all over the place. It is a very very unique role to be in, especially in the army. It's a great role if you can make it there, and it was a great time. I had a couple when I was flying. I had three near crash that probably would have been death experience. I would say two of the three would have almost 100% would have been death experiences. The other one we might have survived. I probably would have just been paralyzed. But it was a great time. But the only reason why I did get out was I loved flying. I loved the job. I loved turning wrenches. I loved every aspect of being a 15 Tango, but I absolutely hated the Army. And that was something that the reason why I got out was I just could not stand the Army way of doing things. And it even took the fun out of it. It literally ruined everything. Like it was just the job was great, but the employer sucked, I guess is the way to think of it. So overall, though, great experience. And if this is a job that you are trying to get into for the Army, I would highly recommend it. It was much better than field artillery, even though field artillery was a different kind of fun and a different kind of suck. It was definitely a great time, and I met a lot of good people. I also met a lot of shitty people, but it was a good time. If you have any comments or questions, anything like that, please do not hesitate to ask. I will do my best to respond. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good one.